The massive hangar of the Galactic fleet shined with silver light. Hundreds of alien pilots walked with pride, their armor glowing, their ships standing tall like beasts of war. Flags of different worlds waved high, and the air carried the smell of fuel, smoke, and power. Everyone had gathered for the grand inspection, where commanders checked every ship before the fleet's next mission. Among the crowd of strong alien warriors stood one man, a human mechanic named Daniel. He wore simple gray overalls with grease stains, his hands rough from years of fixing engines. Most ignored him, some laughed at him, and a few whispered, "Why does the fleet even keep a human here?" Daniel stayed quiet, his eyes calm, but inside his chest a storm of fire waited. Then came Varric, the arrogant alien pilot, tall, strong, his wings folded behind his back. He was the pride of his species, the fastest pilot of the fleet, and he loved to humiliate others. When his eyes fell on Daniel, a cruel smile spread across his face. He shouted loud so the crowd could hear, "Look at this weak human! The fleet trusts a fragile creature to touch our ships?" Laughter burst out from the crowd, echoing like thunder inside the hangar. Daniel stood still, his head slightly lowered, his jaw tight. He had heard insults many times before, but today it felt sharper, heavier, because today the entire fleet was watching, and every laugh cut deeper than a blade. Varric walked closer, towering over him, his claws clicking against the metal floor. "Tell me, human," Varric mocked, "do you even know the difference between a power cell and a waste pipe? Or do you just wipe dirt like a janitor?" The crowd roared again, pointing, whispering, mocking. Some young alien cadets sneered, "Humans should not be near warships." Others muttered, "It's embarrassing for the fleet." But Daniel only breathed slowly, his voice quiet. At his hands folding behind his back, he whispered to himself, "Not today. Not yet." The inspection began, commanders walking ship to ship, checking engines, controls, and systems. Pilots stood proud beside their vessels, showing power and skill. Varric stepped forward with his ship, a shining silver craft with red stripes, a symbol of his victories. He spread his arms, boasting, "Behold the pride of my people, the fastest ship in the fleet." The crowd cheered, clapping, wings and tails slapping the ground. But then, something strange happened. As the commander touched the control panel, the ship shuddered, alarms blared, red lights flashed, smoke hissed from under the wings, and the great engine groaned like a wounded beast. The crowd gasped, voices rising in panic. "What is happening? This ship was supposed to be perfect. Is it breaking down now?" Varric's proud smile vanished, his face darkening. He banged his claws on the panel, shouting, "No, this cannot be. This ship is flawless." But the alarms screamed louder. The engine lights flickered, and the ship shook again. The commander frowned, eyes sharp. "Pilot Varric, your ship is unstable. This is a disgrace before the fleet." Gasps spread across the hangar, pilots murmuring, soldiers whispering. Varric's pride burned like fire, and his eyes turned toward the human mechanic. Daniel stood calmly at the edge, watching silently. Varric snarled, "You, human, come here." The crowd turned, all eyes falling on Daniel. Whispers filled the air. "Is he serious? A human cannot fix that ship. This will be entertaining." Daniel stepped forward slowly, his boots echoing against the steel floor. The hangar grew quiet, the laughter fading into tense silence. He stood before the broken ship, the alarms flashing red on his face. Varric crossed his arms, smirking again. "Fix it, human, in front of the entire fleet, if you can." Daniel touched the side of the ship, feeling the vibrations under his palm. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the sound of the engine, and then, with a calm voice, he said, "I'll need only a few minutes." The crowd erupted again with mocking laughter. Some shouted, "Minutes he cannot fix in years." Others jeered, "Watch, he will make it worse." But Daniel did not flinch, his eyes focused, his hands steady. The commanders leaned closer, curious. The alien soldiers held their breath, waiting for the show, and Varric smirked, certain of Daniel's failure. But inside that hangar, no one knew what the human mechanic was about to reveal. Not even Varric, not even the commanders, not even the galaxy itself. The hangar was silent now, every eye fixed on the human standing before the broken alien ship. Daniel's calm words, "I'll need only a few minutes," still echoed in the vast space. The arrogance in Varric's smirk grew sharper. as if he was already enjoying the human's humiliation. He spread his wings wide and raised his voice. Yes, fix it. Show the fleet what weak humans can do. The crowd erupted with laughter, mocking cheers bouncing from wall to wall. Let him try, someone shouted. This will be fun, another voice jeered. Daniel ignored the noise, his eyes scanning the control panels, his fingers brushing over the glowing circuits. He could feel the pulse of the ship, the rhythm of its energy, like a living heart struggling to breathe. The commander stepped forward, narrowing his alien eyes at Daniel. You have one chance, human, he said firmly. If you fail, you will be removed from this fleet. Daniel gave a small nod, his voice steady. Understood. Varric leaned closer, his sharp teeth gleaming. And when you fail, I will personally escort you out. Daniel did not look at him. Instead, he whispered to himself, focus. He knelt beside the ship, pulling out a small toolkit from his belt. The tools looked simple compared to the advanced alien technology around him. More laughter rippled through the crowd. He uses toys, the alien cadet mocked, but Daniel's hands moved with confidence, his fingers working quickly, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. He opened the lower hatch, revealing a maze of wires glowing with strange blue light. The smell of burnt circuits filled the air, and sparks jumped like angry fireflies. Daniel's eyes narrowed, and he muttered under his breath, Not a normal failure. This was tampered with. The commander caught his words. What did you say, human? Daniel lifted his head slowly, his voice calm but clear. This ship was sabotaged. A ripple of shock spread through the crowd, whispers rising like waves. Sabotage? Impossible. No one would dare. Varric's face darkened, his jaw tightening. Lies. You blame sabotage because you cannot fix it. But Daniel ignored him, his hands moving faster now. He traced the burnt wires, his fingers pressing against hidden circuits. He found something wedged inside, a small black device pulsing faintly with energy. He pulled it out and held it high for all to see. This does not belong here, he said, his voice steady. The crowd gasped. The commander stepped closer, and the whispers turned to shock. Varric's eyes widened for a split second before he snarled, That is nothing, just a broken part. But Daniel's sharp gaze locked on him, and for the first time the arrogant pilot looked uneasy. The commander took the device from Daniel's hand, studying it, his expression darkening. This is a disruptor, he said coldly. If triggered, it would have destroyed not only this ship but every vessel connected to the fleet's energy grid. Gasps filled the air, fear and disbelief spreading through the soldiers. An entire fleet almost destroyed by one hidden device. Daniel stood slowly, wiping grease from his hands, his voice firm. If I don't act now, the system will collapse in minutes. The hangar erupted in chaos. Commanders shouting orders, soldiers running to check their own ships, but in the center of it all stood Daniel, calm and steady, the only one who seemed in control. Varric tried to regain his arrogance, stepping forward with a sneer. You claim much, human, but talk is easy. Daniel's eyes burned with quiet fire. Then watch, he said simply. He dove back into the ship, sparks flying around him, his hands moving with speed and precision. Every tool he used seemed too small for the massive alien systems. Yet somehow, he made them work. The crowd's laughter began to fade, replaced by tense silence. Aliens leaned forward, eyes wide, watching every move. The ship shuddered again, alarms screaming, the floor trembling beneath their feet. The commander shouted, Human, you have seconds left. Daniel gritted his teeth, sweat rolling down his face, his fingers twisting wires, pulling circuits, rerouting power. He whispered, Come on, hold together. And then, it happened. The alarms cut off, the red lights turned green, and the ship's engine roared back to life. The entire hangar froze, silence heavy as stone. Daniel stood up, breathing hard, wiping his hands on his stained overalls. He looked at the commander and said softly, It's stable, for now. The crowd exploded, not with laughter this time, but with gasps, shouts, disbelief. How did he do that? No human should know this technology. Impossible. The commander's eyes locked on Daniel with new respect, his voice firm. You saved this ship, and perhaps this fleet. But before the shock could settle, Daniel's eyes narrowed, staring at the hidden device still in the commander's hand. His voice carried across the hangar, calm but deadly serious. This was not just sabotage. Someone inside this fleet wants us all destroyed. The hangar erupted again, but this time with fear, suspicion, and silence heavier than before. And in the middle of it all, Daniel stood, no longer just a human mechanic, but the man who had seen the danger first, and he knew this was only the beginning. The hangar was still buzzing with whispers, the sound of fear and suspicion crawling through the air. Aliens stared at the small black device in the commander's hands, their minds racing with questions. Who planted it? Why? And how did a human mechanic discover it before anyone else? Varric stood frozen, his pride wounded, his eyes darting between the device and Daniel. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came, only anger boiling in his throat. For the first time, his arrogance cracked, and the fleet noticed. The great pilot who mocked a human now looked uncertain. Daniel remained calm, though his heart beat fast inside his chest. He had not just repaired a ship, he had revealed something bigger. He could feel the weight of hundreds of alien eyes on him, some burning with doubt, others with new respect. He knew one thing clearly: silence would no longer protect him. The commander turned sharply toward him, voice cutting through the noise. "Human, how did you recognize sabotage? Even our best engineers failed to detect it." Daniel paused, choosing his words carefully, then spoke with steady calm. "I've worked on machines my whole life. Every hum, every spark, every vibration has a rhythm. If it breaks, I hear it." He touched the ship's surface gently, like a doctor checking a pulse. This ship wasn't sick, it was poisoned. The words spread like fire through the hangar. Pilots muttered nervously. Engineers frowned. Commanders exchanged glances. Could it be true that a human, with simple tools and bare hands, had seen what they all missed? Varric roared suddenly, desperate to regain control. "Lies! Tricks! He planted it himself!" But the commander's eyes hardened, his claws curling tight around the device. If the human had planted it, would he expose it before the fleet? The question silenced Varric, leaving him trembling with rage. Daniel said nothing more, only. He lowered his gaze. Inside, though, he carried a truth he could not share yet, because what he found inside the ship was not just sabotage, it was a signature, a method he had seen before, one hidden in the shadows of human history. Years ago, on Earth, Daniel had studied secret transmissions, strange codes buried in old satellites, messages that no one else cared about, but Daniel had cared because he believed they came from outside the planet. And now, as he looked at the black device, his suspicion grew. It was built with alien design, but coded with human logic. The commander ordered silence and spoke firmly. "We will investigate this further. Until then, no one leaves this hangar." The soldiers snapped to attention, guarding the exits. The fleet stood trapped in fear, suspicion burning stronger than ever. Daniel quietly moved back from the center, his hands still shaking from the repair. A few alien engineers approached him, their eyes wide, whispering, "How did you do that?" "You worked faster than our machines." Daniel only gave them a small smile and said, "You just have to listen." But deep down he knew it was not just listening, it was knowledge he should not have, knowledge that no one else on Earth dared to explore. He had studied alien systems long before he ever touched them. He had connected dots others ignored, and he knew things that could make him a savior or a threat. Varric stormed away from the group, his pride bleeding. He would not forget this humiliation, and Daniel knew it. The alien pilot's glare promised revenge, and Daniel prepared himself, because insults were one thing, but hatred with power was another. Hours later, as the investigation dragged on, Daniel found himself alone with the ship again. He crouched near the engine, pretending to check stability, but secretly, he tapped into the hidden panel he had noticed earlier. He whispered, "Show me what you're hiding." And the ship responded with a quiet hum, opening a layer no alien had touched. Inside was a system of codes, complex and street, NG. But Daniel's eyes widened because he recognized the pattern. It was the same rhythm, the same signal he had once seen on Earth, buried in the satellite transmissions. This was no accident, no random sabotage. This was a message, and whoever planted it wanted him to find it. His hand trembled as he traced the glowing symbols. They shifted into words he could read, though no alien language should have matched human letters, and it said only one thing: "They are watching you." Daniel's chest tightened, his breath short. Who were they? Why target the fleet? And why him, a human mechanic, the lowest in rank? Behind him a shadow moved, Varric standing silently, his eyes cold. You think you're clever, human, the alien whispered, but cleverness won't save you. Not here, not in this fleet. Daniel turned slowly, his face calm but his voice sharper than before. Maybe not, but truth will. And in that moment, both knew the game had changed. No longer was it about insults or pride. It was about secrets, survival, and a storm that was about to break across the galaxy. The hangar remained locked under strict guard, the sound of boots and claws echoing against the steel floor. Ships stood like silent giants, their glowing lights dimmed, their engines whispering in low hums. Every pilot and mechanic whispered nervously, suspicion twisting like smoke in the air. Who could have planted such a device? And if one ship was sabotaged, how many more carried hidden danger? Daniel stood near the silver vessel, his hands folded behind his back. He felt the weight of the commander's eyes on him, but more than that, he felt the burning hatred from Varric. The alien pilot paced like a caged beast, claws clicking against the floor, rage twisting his pride. He wanted nothing more than to see the human fail or suffer. Suddenly, alarms blared again, this time from the far corner of the hangar. A second ship groaned, its engines flashing red, smoke spilling into the air. Panic rippled through the crowd as soldiers rushed toward it. And then another alarm screamed, followed by another, until the hangar filled with chaos. One by one, ships began showing signs of failure. Systems collapsing, panels sparking, circuits burning. The fleet's pride turned into a nightmare. Pilots shouted, "Check the systems!" Commanders roared orders, their voices sharp with fear. But no matter how many hands worked, the failures spread like wildfire. The commander turned to Daniel, his voice low but firm. "Human, what do you see?" Daniel stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the blinking lights across the hangar. His mind moved quickly, connecting patterns others could not see. "This is not random," he said at last. "It's spreading through the fleet's shared energy grid. One trigger, many ships." The commander's face darkened, realizing the scale of the sabotage. "This is treachery," he growled. "If the fleet launches tomorrow, we will all be destroyed." The words sent a shiver through the hangar. Soldiers stiffening, pilots gripping their weapons. Fear had turned into something heavier. Distrust. Varric stepped forward, pointing a claw at Daniel, his voice booming. "And who found the first device? Who touched the ships before this began? The human!" Whispers rose instantly, some nodding, others frowning. Suspicion turned toward Daniel like blades drawn from their sheaths, but Daniel stood tall, his voice calm but sharp. "If I wanted to destroy your fleet, I would have stayed silent and let you all burn." The commander raised a hand, silencing the growing chaos. His cold eyes moved from Varric to Daniel, then back to the failing ships. "We don't have time for arguments," he said. "The human speaks true. Without him, we would already be ash." Reluctantly, the crowd quieted. Though Varric's glare promised vengeance, Daniel turned back to the ships, his eyes scanning the failing systems. He whispered under it, his breath, "It's all connected. The question is, where does the infection start?" Dropping to one knee, he pressed his palm against the hangar floor. He closed his eyes, feeling the vibrations running beneath the steel plates. Each hum carried a message. Each pulse carried a rhythm. He followed it in his mind until he felt it. One single, unnatural beat hidden among the rest. His eyes opened, sharper than ever. "The sabotage doesn't come from the ships," he said, his voice steady. "It comes from the hangar's core." The commanders froze, their faces pale. If true, that meant the entire base was compromised, not just the fleet. Varric snarled, "Impossible!" But even he sounded less certain now. Daniel moved quickly, racing toward the central control station. Soldiers shouted, some trying to stop him, but the commander raised his hand again. "Let him through." Daniel opened the control panel, his hands steady, his eyes sharp. Inside he found another device, larger, pulsing faster, hidden so deep no casual engineer would ever see it. The glow painted his face in eerie blue light. He turned to the commander, holding the device up high. "This is the heart," he said. "Remove it, or the entire fleet dies." The hangar gasped, the reality settling heavy as iron, hundreds of ships, thousands of lives, all tied to this single poisoned core. But Daniel's voice grew harder as he continued. This wasn't just sabotage. It was planted with knowledge of your systems. Whoever did this knows your fleet better than your own engineers. The commander growled, his claws digging into the metal rail. Then the traitor is not outside the fleet. It is one of us. The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. Pilots looked at each other with suspicion. Soldiers shifted nervously. The unity of the fleet cracked, replaced by doubt and fear. Daniel stared at the glowing device in his hand, as he felt the weight of the secret message he had discovered earlier. They are watching you. And he realized this was not just about sabotage, not just about one fleet. This was a warning of something much larger. Varric finally spoke, his voice dripping with venom. You've made yourself important, human, but importance comes with enemies. Daniel met his glare, unflinching. Then let them come, he said quietly. I'll be ready. And in that moment, even those who once mocked him began to wonder, was this human just a mechanic? Or was he the key to something the galaxy had yet to understand? The hangar's silence cracked with tension, every ship glowing faint red from the poisoned core. Soldiers stood at the ready, pilots clenched their fists, and commanders barked orders that barely held the chaos together. At the center of it all stood Daniel, grease on his hands, sweat on his forehead, but eyes burning with focus. He held the device that pulsed like a heart of fire, the one hidden deep in the hangar's core. If he failed to disable it, the entire fleet would collapse in flames. The commander's voice boomed, steady but strained. Human, can you stop it? Daniel looked at him, his face calm though his chest thundered with fear. I can, he said firmly, but I'll need more than tools. I'll need silence, no interference. The crowd erupted at once, voices shouting, he cannot be trusted. Let our engineers handle it. This is madness. But the commander slammed his claw against the railing, his voice sharper than steel. Quiet. He saved one ship already. He will save the rest, or we will all burn. Reluctantly, silence fell, the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing on Daniel. He crouched near the core panel, pulling out his small, battered toolkit. His fingers trembled for a moment before he whispered to himself, steady, just like back home. Sparks hissed as he opened the device, wires glowing with violent energy. The hum of the fleet's grid thundered through the floor, each pulse sharper, faster, angrier. Daniel worked quickly, his hands moving faster than most could follow. Aliens watched with wide eyes, whispering, how can a human work like that? He touches machines like they are alive, Varric sneered from the shadows, his voice dripping with poison. Or maybe he is the saboteur, pretending to fix what he broke. But even his words felt weaker now, lost under the weight of Daniel's calm, relentless focus. Minutes passed like hours, Daniel's overalls stained with grease, sweat dripping into his eyes. Every spark that burst threatened to blind him. Every hum threatened to tear the floor apart. He whispered, hold together, twisting a final wire with precision. And then, silence. The hangar froze, waiting. Then the lights shifted, red faded to green. Alarms stopped, engines roared back to steady life. The entire fleet pulsed with strength again, alive, united, whole. A breath of relief spread like wind through the soldiers, murmurs filling the silence. He did it. The humans saved us. No machine ever worked so fast. Daniel stood slowly, his shoulders heavy, his hands blackened by smoke. He looked at the commander, his voice soft but firm. It's stable, but not forever. Whoever planted this, they will try again. The commander stepped forward, placing a clawed hand on Daniel's shoulder. You saved thousands today. You saved us all. But Daniel shook his head, his voice quiet. I didn't do it for glory. Machines break. People break. My job is to fix what I can. The words hung in the air, simple yet heavy. For the first time, the fleet did not see a fragile human. They saw something more. Not strength of muscle, not pride of blood, but strength of heart, patience and courage. Varric, trembling with rage, finally stepped forward. This is an insult to the fleet. A human cannot be our savior. But no one cheered with him this time. No one laughed. Instead, silence met his words. And the silence hurt more than laughter ever could. Daniel turned his gaze toward Varric, not with hatred, but with steady calm. I didn't come here to prove I'm better. I came here to keep this fleet alive. Even you. The words cut deeper than any blade, and for the first time Varric lowered his eyes. Arrogance could not shield him anymore. The commander raised his voice, addressing the fleet. Today, this human mechanic showed us what pride cannot. True courage. Remember this day, for it will live in the fleet's history. Cheers erupted, not mocking this time, but real, powerful. Shaking the hangar, aliens stamped their feet, roared their voices, wings and tails beating in rhythm, and in the center of it all, Daniel stood, small in size but towering in presence. Yet inside his chest, he felt no triumph. He only felt the weight of the message he had read earlier. They are watching you. The sabotage was not just about the fleet. It was the beginning of something far greater, and Daniel knew this was not the end of his struggle, but the first step into a war that would test every soul in the galaxy. The cheers in the hangar slowly faded, replaced by a heavy silence. Though the fleet had been saved, a shadow of doubt still lingered in every heart. If one hidden device had nearly destroyed them, who could say more were not waiting in the dark? Daniel stood in the center, grease still on his hands, his chest rising and falling with tired breaths. He looked small among the towering alien warriors, but his presence filled the space like fire. The commander's voice broke the silence, steady and cold. Today, a human saved us. Let the record show. Without him, we would have fallen. Some nodded, their eyes shifting toward Daniel with new respect. Others frowned, their pride too strong to admit it, but no one could deny what they had witnessed. Varric, however, refused to bow to truth. His claws scraped the steel floor as he stepped forward, anger shaking in his voice. This changes nothing. He is still weak, still human, still beneath us. But the word sounded hollow now, empty against what everyone had seen. Daniel turned his gaze toward Varric, his eyes calm but sharp. You think strength is in claws, in armor, in speed, he said softly. But real strength is fixing what is broken when everyone else gives up. The hangar fell silent, the words cutting deeper than any blade. For the first time, many began to see the difference between pride and courage. The commander nodded slowly, repeating the words louder. Fixing what is broken when others give up. That is strength. Whispers spread through the crowd, not of laughter, but of reflection. Some pilots lowered their heads, ashamed of their earlier mockery. Even a few young cadets stared at Daniel with wide eyes, seeing him not as weak but as something greater. Varric's face twisted with fury, his pride burning like fire. But when he tried to speak again, the commander's cold eyes silenced him. No more words, pilot. Today you kneel in shame, while the human stands in honor. The hangar gasped as Varric's wings trembled, his jaw tightening. Slowly, unwillingly, he dropped to one knee, his eyes burning with humiliation. For the first time, the arrogant pilot bowed his head, not to a commander, not to his people, but to a human mechanic. Daniel's heart ached at the sight, but he did not smile. He did not enjoy victory, nor did he crave revenge. He simply spoke with quiet firmness. I don't want you to kneel to me, I want you to stand beside me. The words struck harder than any insult. A hush fell over the hangar, every soldier and pilot holding their breath, because Daniel was not asking for glory. He was demanding respect, equality, unity. The commander stepped forward, his deep voice echoing across the hall. And what do you demand, human? After saving our fleet, after humbling our pride, what is it you want? Daniel raised his head, his voice strong, though soft. I want every human in this fleet, every human in this galaxy to be treated with the respect you give yourselves. Gasps rippled across the hangar. This was not a request for himself, but for all of humanity. And in that moment, his voice carried the weight of every human insulted, mocked, or silenced. The commander's eyes narrowed, studying him. You ask not for power, not for rank, not for glory, but for respect. Daniel nodded once, steady as stone, because without respect, fleets break faster than machines. The silence that followed was heavy but alive. The words sank deep into the hearts of many who had never questioned their own pride. Even those who hated humans found themselves unable to argue. Varric's claws dug into the floor as he rose, still trembling with rage. He spat. You think this changes everything? One moment of luck does not rewrite history. Daniel looked at him calmly. Maybe not history, but it can change the future. And with those words, the atmosphere of the hangar shifted forever. No longer was the human mechanic invisible. No longer was he the subject of laughter. He had become something else, a symbol, a reminder, a spark. The commander raised his arm, his voice sharp as steel. Let it be known, today, a human saved the fleet. From this day forward, humans will no longer be treated as lesser. They will stand as allies. The hangar roared with voices, some cheering, some reluctant, but all unable to deny the truth. Daniel stood quietly in the storm of noise, his face unreadable. But inside his chest burned with a mix of relief and unease, because even as the fleet began to shift toward respect, he knew one truth too well: the hidden sabotage, the coded message, "They are watching you," meant the real enemy had not yet revealed itself, and Daniel understood. This victory was only the beginning of a far greater war. The hangar still echoed with voices, some in support, some in disbelief. Daniel stood quietly at the center, his grease-stained overalls glowing faint under the hangar leg. As the commander's declaration had shaken the fleet, humans would no longer be treated as lesser, but Daniel knew the real fight had only just begun. As the noise died down, the commander turned to him again, his deep voice cutting through the silence. "Human, you saved us today, but the danger is not over. What else do you know?" Daniel hesitated, his eyes flicking toward the black device still clutched in the commander's claw. He thought of the hidden message he had seen burned into the ship's secret code. "They are watching you." The words still rang in his mind like thunder. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice firm but calm. That device was not just sabotage. It was a warning. Whoever planted it wanted me to find it. Gasps rippled through the crowd, pilots shifting uneasily. The commander narrowed his eyes. "Why you? Why would they choose a human?" Daniel's jaw tightened, but his voice carried no fear. "Because I've seen their work before. Long before I ever touched your ships, I studied signals from the stars. Strange codes, hidden rhythms. The same patterns are here." He held the device higher for all to see, the glow painting shadows across his face. This was not the work of one alien species. This was something larger, something that hides behind all of us. The hangar shook with whispers, fear spreading through the fleet like a storm. Aliens muttered, "A greater enemy? Larger than the fleet?" Varric spat bitterly. "Or lies, told by a human who wants importance." But this time, his words fell flat. Too many had seen Daniel's skill, too many had felt the truth of his warnings. Daniel stepped forward, his voice louder, sharper now. "Mock me if you want, but the truth doesn't care about pride. Whoever they are, they don't see humans or aliens, they see prey." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. The commander studied him carefully, then turned to the fleet. "This mechanic, this human, may hold the key to saving us all. From this day forward, he does not serve beneath us. He stands among us." The roar that followed shook the hangar, a sound of unity that had never been heard before. Even those who hated the idea found themselves joining the chant, because deep down they all knew something far greater than their pride was coming. Daniel lowered the device, his heart heavy but steady. He had not asked for this, had not wanted to stand in the center of galactic history, but here he was, the mechanic mocked as weak, now standing as a symbol of survival. He whispered to himself, "If they're watching me, then I'll make sure they see strength." Varric, still kneeling in shame, lifted his head, his voice low and trembling. You shamed me before the fleet. But if what you say is true, then you will need warriors, even me." Daniel met his eyes, calm and steady. "Then stop fighting me. Stand beside me." It was not forgiveness. It was a command for change. Varric's jaw tightened, but he nodded once, the smallest bow of respect. For the first time, the human mechanic and the arrogant alien pilot stood not as enemies but as uneasy allies. The commander raised his arm, his voice carrying across the hangar like thunder. "From this moment, humanity is no longer the shadow of this galaxy. They are its fire." Cheers erupted, wings spread wide, weapons raised in salute. The sound rolled through the hangar, shaking steel, echoing beyond the walls as if the galaxy itself was listening, and Daniel stood quietly in the storm of noise, his hands scarred, his eyes sharp, his heart steady. He was no longer just a mechanic, no longer just a human among giants. He was proof. Proof that when mocked, when underestimated, when pushed aside, humanity did not break. They fixed, they endured, they rose. The fleet would remember this day forever. The day an arrogant alien pilot mocked a human mechanic, and the day the galaxy realized humanity was far more than anyone expected.